Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai. We'll continue with chapter 22 from book 9 of the Srimad, Devi Bhagavatam. Sri Narayana spoke. Then the king of the Danavas, very powerful, bowed down to Mahadeva, Lord Shiva, and ascended on the chariot with his ministers. Mahadeva gave orders to his army to be ready at once. So Shankachuta did as well. The terrible fight then ensued between them. The battlefield then assumed a grim aspect, as if the time of the dissolution had come. Bhagavan Mahadeva sat under the peepal tree with Kartikeya and Bhadrakali. Sankachuta, decked with his jeweled ornaments, sat on the jewel throne, surrounded by his kotis and kotis of Danavas. The Shankar's army got defeated at the hands of the Danavas. The Devas, with their cuts and wounds on their bodies, fled from the battlefield terrified. Kartikeya gave words, "Don't fear," to the Devas and excited them. Only Skanda resisted the Deva forces. In one moment, he defeated hundreds of Danava forces. The lotus-eyed Kali also engaged in killing the Asuras. She became very angry, and no sooner did she slay the Asura forces than she began to drink their blood. She easily slew with her one hand, and at every time put into her mouth 10 locks and 100 locks of elephants. Thousands and thousands of headless bodies came to be witnessed in the field. The bodies of the Danavas were all cut and wounded by the arrows of Kartikeya. They were all terrified and fled away. Only Rishaparva, Damba, and Vikakana remained fighting with Skanda, Kartikeya, with a heroic valor. Mahamari, too, did not show his back, and he fought vigorously. By and by, they all became very much confused and distressed, but they did not turn their backs on the battle. Seeing this terrible fight of Skanda, the Devas began to shower flowers. The killing of the Danavas looked like the dissolution of the world. Sakachunda then began to shoot arrows from his chariot. The shooting of arrows by the king seemed as if rains were coming down. Everything became pitch dark. Fires only were seen emitting their golden tongues. The Devas, Nadishvara, and others fled away terrified. Only Kartikeya remained in the battlefield. Then Sankachuta began to throw terribly showers of mountains, snakes, stones, and trees, so much so that Kartikeya was covered by them as the sun became obscured by fog. The demon king cut off the weighty quiver and the pedestal of Skanda and broke his chariot. By the divine weapons of the Danava, the peacock, the vehicle of Kartikeya, became exhausted. Kartikeya threw one Shakti weapon on the breast of the Danava, but before it fell, the Danava cut off that, lustrous like the sun, and in return darted his Shakti. By the stroke, Kartikeya became stunned for a moment, but he immediately regained his consciousness. He then took up the quiver that Bhagavan Vishnu gave him before, and many other weapons, and ascending on another chariot built of jewels, began to fight out violently and valiantly. Getting angry, he resisted all those showers of snakes, mountains, and trees by his divine weapons. He resisted fire by his watery weapon. Then he cut off easily Shankachuta's chariot bow, armored charioteer, and his bright crown, and he threw on his breast one blazing Shakti of white color. The Danava was full of unconsciousness, but at the next moment he regained his consciousness quickly, mounted on another chariot, and took already his quiver. The Danava was the foremost in his magic powers. He, by the power of Maya, made a shower of arrows, so much so that Kartikeya became completely covered by the multitude of arrows. Then the Danava took one invincible Shakti, lustrous like 100 suns. It seemed the flames of fire were licking high, as if the dissolution time had come nigh. Aflamed by anger, the Danava threw the Shakti at Kartikeya. It seemed then that a burning mass of fire fell on him. The powerful Kartikeya became senseless. Bhadrakali came immediately and took him on her lap and carried him before Lord Shiva, who easily restored him to his life by his knowledge, power, and gave him the indomitable strength. He then got up in full vigor. Bhadrakali, as well, went to the field to see Kartikeya's forces. Nandishvari and other heroes, the Devas, Gandharva, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Kinnaras, flooded her. Hundreds of war drums were sounded, and hundreds of persons carried Madhu. Going to the battleground, she gave a war cry. The Danava forces got fainted by that cry. Bhadrakali shouted aloud, inauspicious peals after peal of laughter. Then she drank Madhu and danced in the battlefield. Seeing Kali in the battlefield, Sankachuta came up again and imparted the spiritual fearlessness to his warriors, trembling with fear. Bhadrakali projected then the fire weapon, flaming like the great dissolution fire, but the king quickly put out that by the watery weapon. Kali then projected the very violent and wondrous Varastra. The Danava cut that off as well. Kali then threw the flame like Maheshvastri. The king made it futile by his weapons. Then the Devi, purifying the Narayana Vastra with a mantra, threw it on the king. At this, the king instantly alighted from his chariot and bowed down to it. The Narayana Astra rose high up in the air like the dissolution fire. Sankachuta fell prostrate on the ground with devotion. The Devi threw then the Brahmastra, purifying it with mantras, but it was rendered futile by the Danava's weapon. The Devi again shot the divine weapons, purifying them with mantras, but they were all nullified by the divine weapons of the Danava. Then Bhadrakali threw one Shakti extending to one Yogana. The Danava also cut it into pieces by his divine weapons. The Devi then, being very much enraged, became ready to throw Pashupata Astra, when the incorporeal voice, heavenly voice, was heard from the heavens, prohibiting her and saying, "O Devi, the high-souled Danava would not be killed by this Pashupata weapon, for Bhuma granted him this boon, that until Vishnu's Kavaka will remain on his neck, and that his wife's chastity be not violated, old age and death will not be able to touch him." Hearing this celestial voice, the Devi at once desisted, but she out of hunger devoured hundreds of lakhs of demons. The terrible Devi then went with great speed to devour Sankachuta, but the Danava resisted her by his sharp divine weapons. The Devi then threw on him a powerful axe, lustrous like the summer sun. But the Danava cut it into pieces. The Devi, seeing this, became very angry and proceeded to devour him. But the Danava king, the lord of all cities, expanded his body. At this, Kali became violently angry and assumed a terrible appearance when quickly and with the blow of one fist broke his chariot and dropped down the charioteer. Then she hurled on the Asura one Sula weapon, blazing like the Pralaya fire. Sankachuta easily held that in his left hand. The deity became very angry and struck the Danava with her fist. The deity's head reeled and rolling. The demon's head reeled and rolling. He fell unconscious for a moment. Next moment, regaining his consciousness, he got up, but he did not fight hand with the Devi. Rather, he bowed to her. The weapon that the Devi threw afterwards were partly cut down by the Danava and partly taken up by him and absorbed in him, and then rendered futile. Then Bhadrakali caught hold of the Danava and whirling him around and round, threw him aloft. Then the powerful Sankachuta fell on the ground from high with great force. He immediately got up and bowed down to her. He then gladly ascended on his beautiful chariot built of excellent jewels. He did not feel any fatigue with the war and went on fighting. Then the Devi Bhadrakali, feeling hungry, began to drink the blood of the Danavas and their flesh. She came before Mahadeva, Shiva, and described to him the whole history of the warfare from beginning to end. Hearing the killing of the Danavas, Mahadeva began to laugh. She went on saying, "The Danavas that get out of my mouth while I'm chewing them are the only ones that are living. This number will be about 1 lakh. And when I took up the Pashupata weapon to kill the Danava, the heavenly voice spoke, 'He is invulnerable to you.' But the very powerful Danava did no more fling any weapons on me. He simply cut to pieces those that I threw to him." Here ends the 22nd chapter in the 9th book on the fight between the Devas and Sankachuta in the Mahapuranam, Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharishi Veda Vyasa. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.